So today I'd like to talk about distorted tones, which might be the best for you and which might be the best for the situation that you're in. When I think of some of the iconic tones, whether it be through all guitar history or my personal playlist of guitar history, some of the rigs that accompany those tones can be pretty intimidating and improbable, if not impossible, to recreate. Not even to dwell on some of the smaller details like batteries sounded different in the 60s, which is probably not even true. Or is it? The size of these rigs that were clearly set up with the help of roadies or guitar techs and whatnot can be almost comical. A lot of iconic rock guitar tones involved Marshall amps. Now, I clearly could not demo one of these amps in this apartment without exploding my windows, so this is where my trusty FM3 comes in handy to explore some of those iconic tones. Here's an example of a 100-watt Marshall Plexi and then a JTM 45, kind of getting that classic rock sound or classic like blues rock lead. Both of these sounds are going to be pretty big and would be best suited for someone ready to play in a loud band. Guitar World magazine famously features PDFs of iconic guitar rigs that can look as complicated as the rat's nest of wires on and below my desk. It would be pretty daunting to recreate this chaos. Sometimes a guitar tone is impossible to recreate because the materials just aren't around anymore and the amps are too rare. Other times a guitarist would be like, hey, here's an amp I endorse and I use. You can just get it and then you'll have my sound. People go and get that, hoping to capture their guitar hero's magic. When I was in high school, I had a summer job and saved up for a Carvin Steve Vai Legacy half stack. I guess I was thinking go big or go home. I'd have no idea. I was ready to hang a sign on the door to my room that said like, enter at your own risk, beware of tone. But then it ended up being that I spent all summer working for an amp that I then decided was cool, just not for me. While I admired and admire players like Vai, I had to realize that that's not exactly what I do. After that experience, I started going more toward combo amps. At that time in college, I had a lot of fun playing through Hot Rod Deluxes, Hot Rod DeVilles, Blues Juniors. If a venue had a twin, that would be great. The distorted tones you'd get from these amps were obviously much different than those Marshall half stacks or that Legacy half stack. You might not be able to get those huge rock tones, but you can get a lot of different gain tones that are just a bit more compact. I could use this for a blues gig, a country gig, a singer-songwriter gig, a wedding gig, any kind of cover band situation. It was really versatile. So if you play one of those genres or like to mix and match as well and play at places that don't necessarily want a ton of volume, these might be the amps for you. That being said, I'm aware a Fender Twin can be incredibly loud. It just doesn't have to be. So here's an example of a Fender Twin and a Morgan AC20 Deluxe. Obviously, it's worth pointing out the convenience of trying out all these tones in my Fractal FM3 before even considering buying any of them. All these tones from today are some of the stock presets available. I don't really know any guitar stores that would be open to me coming in, lining up a series of iconic guitar rigs and being like, hey, I'm going to try all these out at full volume. Is that okay? So when I used to play through amps, I eventually downsized all the way to a Fender Blues Junior, eventually going back up to a deluxe in terms of weight, but that Blues Junior was fantastically portable. It sounded much smaller than, say, the deluxe, which is why I went back to the deluxe, but every now and again I would prefer that smaller sound for the situation I was in. If you're playing in a band without a drummer, one with a limited kit, or a band that's like always kind of quiet, or you just want a more focused tone, these smaller amps may be the way to go for you. They don't really take up a lot of space in the mix, which can be pretty helpful. So up next is a Fender Blues Junior and a Fender Champ, the latter of which is a very small amp. So the big lesson I learned after getting that half stack in high school was that we all know Strats into Marshalls or Les Pauls into Marshalls sound amazing, but they might not be what you need. They might be too much power for that singer-songwriter gig. And conversely, putting a delicate blues overdrive before a Fender Deluxe or something like that isn't going to get you huge rock tones. There are more versatile amps available, but if you want specific sounds, chances are you might have to go with those specific rigs. Although it's always fun to build the rigs of our heroes, I'm definitely guilty of that. I think it's best for us to look at the kind of player we are and the kind of playing situations that we're in when building a rig for ourselves. That way you don't bring too much or too little power to the gig. If you have any all-time favorite rigs or some favorite rig that you built yourself, please share them in the comments. I love talking to you guys. So thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you all next week.